Good morning. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. It's April 21st, 2026. Please stand for the invocation. We have Pastor Matt Ringen of the Cross Point Church, and then after that we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
All right, let's pray. Father God, I thank you, Lord, that we are able to gather here, Lord, as a nation that is free, Lord, to govern ourselves. Father, I pray, Lord, that as discussion happens today, Lord, I pray, God, that we hear each other well, Lord. I pray, Lord, for this Board of County Commissioners. God, I pray, Lord, as they seek to lead and guide and care for and serve the people of Lee County, God, I pray, Lord, that you will pour out your wisdom on them. Lord, I pray that you will guide their decision-making process, Lord. Father, we are grateful for their desire to serve the people of Lee County. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. We have a couple of ceremonials this morning. First, Commissioner Hammond, have the National Therapy Animal Day.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am so thrilled to be able to present this proclamation this morning. Can I have everybody who's here for the National Therapy Animal Day come forward? I'm going to ask you to just stand right next to the podium here with your animals. So come on forward. And as you're coming forward, just stand right by the podium, and then I'll read the resolution into the record. We've got some very special guests. We're going to need you guys after the meeting today. Calm us down.
Yeah, we can all use some of that.
Do you have one for each commissioner?
Let's leave a couple of dogs for us.
No, there's five. There's five. One for each of us.
Can we rent
We've
those?
got one for each commissioner, that's right. Okay, hey, how's it going? So I will read the resolution into the record, and then we'll come and take a photo together, and then after the photo, if somebody could just say a few words, that would be fantastic. So the proclamation reads as follows: whereas there are thousands of Alliance of Therapy Dogs, therapy animal teams in communities across the United States, including dedicated volunteer teams serving residents throughout Lee County, and whereas Pet Partners has designated April 30th as National Therapy Animal Day, and whereas scientific research shows that interacting with therapy animals can reduce stress, relieve depression, slow heart rate, lower blood pressure, and strengthen the immune system, and whereas therapy animals in Lee County, including those serving through programs such as Beasley's Paw Prints Pet Therapy Program, play an essential role in improving human health and well-being through the human-animal bond, and whereas therapy animal teams interact with a variety of people in our community, including children receiving trauma therapy, veterans, seniors, patients, students, and those approaching end of life, and whereas these exceptional therapy animals working in partnership with their human companions bring comfort, emotional support, and healing to those in need, and whereas National Therapy Animal Day recognizes the meaningful contributions of therapy animal teams and encourages more pet owners to consider becoming an Alliance of Therapy Dogs volunteer to help expand access to therapy animal visits in our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida does hereby proclaim April 30th, 2026 as National Therapy Animal Day. And we encourage everyone to celebrate therapy animals and their human handlers. And we further publicly salute the service of therapy animal teams in our community and in communities across the nation. It's signed by our chairman, the Honorable Commissioner Cecil Pendergrass. Thank you guys for all you do.
Hey, good morning. I'll count us down for 2 photos. I think we've got some treats for attention. Say the word, they know it. 3, 2, 1, and 3, 2,
Okay, Alicia, right here at the podium. Perfect.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Alicia Shannon, and I am the CEO of the Children's Advocacy Center of Southwest Florida. We are honored to stand here with Lee County Board of County Commissioners as you recognize the National Therapy Animal Day. I also want to thank Carol Beasley and United Way for making this program possible and helping us do it every day. Pet therapy is a powerful part of healing for children and families who have experienced trauma. And at the Children's Advocacy Center, we see firsthand how therapy animals help reduce anxiety, build trust, and bring comfort during difficult moments. Sometimes healing begins with something as simple as a wagging tail. Thank you to the Lee County Board of County Commissioners for supporting compassionate programs that help children and families heal.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We love this program so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel less stressed already.
Thank you. Well, let's see if they leave a dog for us first.
Yeah, that's way better than blood pressure medicine.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hammond. Next is, I have one, it's the National Travel and Tourism Week. If I could have everybody come forward this week, come up from the National Tourism Week. We have a great TDC staff up here. They brought the dolphin with them. Seeing a lot of them every day now, that's for sure. The water is beautiful and everybody's enjoying the beaches. Thank you, Tamara.
Thank you.
If we get down here, I'll read a resolution. We'll come and take a picture, and I'm sure Tamara will speak to us then.
Okay.
The proclamation reads, whereas tourism is a cornerstone of Lee County's economy, welcoming 3.3 million visitors in 2025, all driving the left lane, by the way, and generating $5.1 billion in economic impact, whereas tourism supports more than 31,000 local jobs and nearly $1.9 billion in wages, benefits families, businesses, and our economy. Whereas tourism revenues enhance the quality of life for residents, supporting beach nourishment, public facilities, destination improvements, while also advancing events and experiences that enrich our community. And whereas the success of the Lee County tourism industry is made possible by the thousands of dedicated hospitality professionals and ongoing efforts of the Lee County Visitor and Convention Bureau to promote Fort Myers, islands, beaches, and neighborhoods as a welcoming, desirable destination. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida does hereby proclaim May 3rd through the 9th, 2026, the National Travel and Tourism Week in Lee County, encourages residents, businesses, and community partners to recognize, celebrate the vital role tourism plays in our economy and quality of life. And where it be without further resolve, the board encourages participation in Light Up Lee by illuminating buildings and spaces in blue in celebration of National Travel and Tourism Week. National Travel and Tourism Week 2026, duly executed by myself, the board. Cecil Pendergrass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So let's go.
Don't let the dolphin get it wet.
Good morning. If we could squeeze an update on Kiter.
We're have a good time.
Perfect. I'll count us down for 3. 3, 2, 1. And 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for honoring National Travel and Tourism Week with this proclamation. You know, the first week in May is designated as National Travel and Tourism Week, and all over the country there will be events to celebrate. But right here in Lee County, the reason we want to do this is celebrate the power of tourism. Not only your Visitor and Convention Bureau staff, but we have partners from the industry that joined us here this morning. Lots and lots of people have jobs here in Lee County because of the power of tourism, and I want to say thank you to them for delivering over and over and over again great customer customer service, fantastic experiences, memories that will last in families' lives forever. And generation after generation will continue to come back here and enjoy the travel and tourism industry. So big thank you to you for honoring them this week, and we'll keep going.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara, for you and your staff. You do an amazing job every year, so thank you.
Thank you for all your years of service. Thank you.
Okay, move on to the recap. We have, the first item is C4, approve motion petition to vacate. After that, be deferred to the May 5th meeting. I get a motion?
I'll move we defer.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment on deferring C4? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. And revision of corrections, C17.
Mr. Chair, if we could defer C17, I'm the one that brought it up. There's been a lot of emails that come in of recent. Certainly would like to defer that.
Okay. Is that a motion?
That's a motion, yes.
We have a second. Any public comment on deferring item C17? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. And then revision corrections, approved interlocal agreement with the City of Sanibel, Murray Beach Shoreline Fund. Add verbiage. That is there a motion for that?
I'll move that one.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any
That was just a clarification. That was for the pier and not for beach renourishment in the way it was phrased, so.
Right. Any public comment on that? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you. And move on to consent agenda items. Items to be pulled by the discussion of the board. Commissioner Hammond.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item C5, please.
C5, Commissioner Hammond. Commissioner Wayne.
I don't have any. Thank you, sir.
I do not have any. Commissioner Logan.
None.
Commissioner Petrovsky. None. No? Okay. Have a motion to approve the balance.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment on the balance of the items other than 5 on the consent? Okay, we'll come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Commissioner Hammond, C5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask if Mr. Harner could introduce the item real quick, and then I'll ask some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is to direct staff to prepare a county-initiated lead plan amendment.
Okay, so my question is, Mr. Harner, and maybe you can farm this out to whoever you think is appropriate to answer it, but talk to me about the rationale. Why are we looking at doing this as a county-initiated lead plan amendment here?
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Mark Mora to respond.
Sure. Mark?
Good morning, Commissioners. I appreciate the question, Commissioner Hammond. The board previously directed staff to look at all of our regulations, identify those that are unnecessary, that have redundancies and inconsistencies. This is an example of one of those regulations. It was prompted by the fact that we have several privately initiated amendments to the planning community there in Southeast Lee, and staff recommends that we take a more holistic look at planning in that area. If not, we will be dealing with potentially up to 11 different amendments to this plan. I think the holistic approach allows us to be more consistent and look at things comprehensively. We will not overlook what the DRGR actually protects, the groundwater resource. I think that'll be central to the work that staff does on bringing these amendments back. So it's a reaction to the fact that we do have some pressure to develop in the area, our desire to do that thoughtfully and preserve all of those environmental protections that are currently in place and look at it from a holistic approach instead of one-off.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, basically we have maybe up to 11 different applications all coming in piecemeal. None of them are really written in relation to each other, and so we could end up with 11 different changes down there, and none of them would really work together. So what you're suggesting is instead of doing 11 different piecemeal changes, take a look at everything comprehensively and holistically, and the staff, instead of the developers, the staff would end up writing something that makes the most sense for the goals of the southeast part of the county?
That's well said, Commissioner. That's absolutely the intent.
Okay, so then I guess my next question is, what opportunities will there be for public input then into this process?
Yeah, today's motion is specifically just to direct staff to put these draft amendments together. That's the step one. We have nothing as to date. Once we have a staff report and draft proposals, we'll bring them to the LPA. That's the first step. At that point in time, the public will have an opportunity for input. We'll get input from the LPA, and we'll bring it back to the board. for a transmittal hearing. That's another opportunity for the community to voice their opinion and provide input to the board. After that, it will go up to the state for review and come back to staff, and we'll present it lastly for adoption. So that'll be the third opportunity for our public to provide some input on this. So I think 3 different times of input. You'll hear it. You can provide additional direction to staff if we haven't got the staff report just right or to your desire.
So at least 3 public hearings, 3 opportunities for the public to weigh in. And just like we do with every agenda item, the backup, this information is going to be published online for people to research and do their homework.
Absolutely. The staff report will be published online before the LPA meeting.
Okay. So again, just to kind of recap, what I'm hearing you say is potentially the way the process has always worked, we've had, and I've heard this complaint, commissioners, for years, that it's the people who own the land, it's the developers who come in and they submit their applications for these comp plan changes, and none of them really seem to work together, and we never take into account the quote-unquote cumulative impacts of each change. Here, the staff is saying, we've got all these applications, but instead of taking them one by one piecemeal, let's look at everything holistically and comprehensively, and let's see if we can draft a policy for that area that works better to meet the goals of the community for that area. So the staff's going to write it, not the applicants. And so I think that actually makes a lot of sense, because we're looking at an area that is getting closer to build out. We want to look at the cumulative impacts of all these different changes and make sure that they do work together, so that ultimately we have a really good future for the county as this area develops, that we think about all the things, the environment, the roads, everything as they work together. So I'll go ahead and support this item. I know I saw some feedback about this was the end of the DRGR, but actually I think this might be that kind of comprehensive long-term planning to make sure that changes that are being proposed down there work together as opposed to against each other.
I'd like to second that. This again, is in my district, but we all unanimously agreed last year to, the term was DOGE, whatever was in vogue, to talk about government efficiency and if predictable processes for residents and property owners. And I like, in addition to today, public input that we will probably have, we have 3 more public input opportunities has been laid out here for us. But if the property owners have a predictable process that's been staff-driven, looking at all the pieces on the chessboard at once, I think that really shows a lot of good faith and preserves a balance between both sides. So I'm happy to second your motion.
Thank you.
It sounds like we're even so going one step further in resolving the DRGR's whole initiative is making sure the mitigation that we're doing is concurrent with what we're requiring of today is to protect our water supply. And not only that, but we're removing these indigenous things. These are already things that our developers are doing as they go through each of these. And so this will be that holistic approach that moving forward, we're making the right, smart decisions. I mean, staff, if I'm wrong, it sounds like we're improving from our original plan from the 90s. We're now doing more conservative efforts to put better processes in place to protect our water supply.
You're correct, Commissioner. I think the consistency that we'll achieve by approaching it this way will be an overall positive for that area.
Great. Great. I think it's great we're getting all the true factual information out, because Tommy gets written in the social media or the news press, it'll be totally different than that. So thank you for bringing it up. I appreciate it. Thank you. Any other discussion before we go to public comment?
No.
Okay. First speaker is Joyce Campanana. Joyce? Joyce, don't have to say District 2 speak. You said you're speaking for Marcia Ellis, though, right?
Correct. My name is Joyce Campani. You messed it up this time.
I was trying to read. You got 2 different names. You got 2 different names there today. So you got
Joyce
you and
Campana
Marcia.
for Marcia Ellis.
You don't have her hair, so I knew that didn't happen. So.
Good morning, and these comments were prepared before the comments that just preceded me regarding this item. I'm here today on behalf of Marcia Ellis, the resident affected by this amendment. Ms. Ellis urges you to table this item 5, directing staff to prepare a county initiative Lee Plan amendment. But I'm hearing today this is just to start preparing, revising the plan, okay? She would like to see more transparency, better backup materials, and stakeholder input for this change of this magnitude. Moving forward now is premature and falls outside the established norms. The Southeast Lee Community Plan was built on meaningful public engagement and must remain durable. It was designed to protect a density reduction groundwater resource area, which is the community's primary water source and is a critical habitat for the Florida panther. The consequences of eroding this plan are already evident, with private wells facing deficits and drawing from deeper in the aquifer, increasing energy costs and wasting water, which raises utility bills. The current low-density pattern is not an unnecessary regulation. It is vital protection each resident relies on. We face a housing market undercut by overdevelopment, which inflates a development bubble rather than meeting data-informed needs. It is premature and undermines good governance to update the Lee Plan before the Lower West Coast Water Supply Plan is updated in 2027 and is mandated to be incorporated into the comprehensive plan. So if you are going to have staff look at this, it would be a wise move to incorporate those at the same time in terms of efficiency and comprehensiveness. There's a lack of disclosure regarding toilet to tap and effluent recharge schemes, and it suggests families rely on chemically treated sewage effluent while abandoning regulations to protect our naturally pure aquifers. It is unacceptable to contemplate a future where we sacrifice clean groundwater in place of development and expect to drink toilet to tap water. Please make sure this is comprehensive and protects our water supply and our natural resources in terms of animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is, I believe it's Marissa Figueroa. Probably any information on here. Do you represent somebody? I see the name tag.
I'm sorry?
So you represent a company, you have a name tag on?
Yes, I have a name tag on. My name is Marissa Figueroa. I'm the Southwest Florida Policy Specialist with Audubon, Florida.
Okay.
So thank you for the opportunity to comment. We do appreciate the board's perspective and thoughtful approach for planning this, for this planned area. And for them taking a county-wide led approach helps to ensure growth guided by long-term priorities and clear vision. So as staff move forward, we'd like to add or offer a few conservation priorities for consideration. The first is to recognize the value of natural systems, which I was happy to hear you already highlight that as well. So Southeast Lee, obviously we know it does incorporate that important habitat for Florida panther, but it's also important habitat for wetland and wildlife corridors that support our water supply, improve our overall water quality, and our habitat connectivity. And these are essential services to the community that must be recognized and protected. Audubon would also like to highlight the importance of the DRGR and the opportunity to strengthen it, especially given the water supply challenges that we've seen this dry season. And second, to ensure staff capacity. With continued development interest, having those resources in place will help to maintain consistency with the Lee Plan and support informed decision-making. And third, providing consistent conservation standards. So as these policies are updated, just making sure that we have clear language to help reinforce those protection while supporting the board's long-term vision for balanced growth. And finally, meaningful public engagement. I was happy to hear that as well. I know it's been echoed already, but with this amendment process, we're excited to hear that there's opportunities for community input, and we encourage ample notice and accessible opportunities for participation when possible. So Audubon, Florida does stand ready to be a constructive partner in this effort, and we look forward to working with you to support thoughtful growth and to help preserve natural systems that make Southwest Florida resilient. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Matt DePools from Sanibel.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matt Palace. I'm the Environmental Policy Director for the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. Nice to see some of you out of the field, but glad to be up here. Happy to comment on this today. I think this is a really important thing that we need to get right. The DRGR is incredibly important to the county, not just the people that live immediately around it, but all of the county. It protects our water resources. We are a county that has lots of impaired water bodies that constantly have a drag on not only our environment, but our economy. We saw all the great tourism support that we have here in this economy They had a little sign that said $5.1 billion in economic output. That is directly reliant on having clean water, which is tied to having robust groundwater resources and the ability to recharge those resources into the aquifer. So this is something we cannot afford to get wrong. Great to hear that staff is going to be paying attention to those ecosystem services associated with the environment. I would also stress that we really need to adhere to that historic hydro pattern that was enshrined in the 2010 decision that established the DRGR. These are important tenets of this area that shouldn't fall by the wayside. But in addition to the environmental resources, the panther habitat, the water filtration that comes from this, the low density, the importance of public engagement has been said multiple times today, and I really want to drive that point home. I think there's a difference between box checking exercises where we're showing the public what we're doing and actual meaningful public engagement where we're engaging the public. We're talking to our experts, we're talking to the concerned citizens, and we're building the project from day one with the help of the community that wants the best for the future of Lee County. So engaging people prior to presenting these amendments to the LPA is going to be a really important step, and I think that that would engender a lot of community support for the future of Lee County, for the future of this area. So I think starting early is going to be the benefit to that because, as was mentioned before, this is not something we're ever going to get back if it goes away. This is not something that we can afford to get wrong, and this is something that really is going to dictate the future of Lee County for all of us, for citizens here. So I thank you for your careful consideration, and I would include in your direction to staff to engage early and often community support for this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I have no other cards on this item. Any other speakers for number 5 on the consent? Please come forward. Let's give it to him. Just state your name for the record. Thank you. Welcome back.
It's good to see you all. James Kennedy, I'm from Alva. My concern about any changes to the DRGR policies is simply this. When we make these changes, take into consideration that it is not unheard of for your body to make changes to the DRGR uses in the first place. We've made 3 changes in the last 5 years that have changed the use of DRGR designated parcels for public facilities. So when you make these changes or you consider these changes that are going to be made with the intent of the DRGR being to support groundwater retention and recharge, if we're going to make it a waste facility or a water facility in a couple of years, then we've really done more damage than good. So just take that into consideration when you're considering these plans. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other public speakers, number 5? Come back to the board. We had a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
If you don't mind. I just want to get a couple things on the record because, as has already been mentioned by some of the speakers, sometimes we get falsely accused of things and then people read the bill afterwards and figure out that it's not really what they just accused us of. So these applications are already in place. We're not putting these 11 projects on the books. They're already there, okay? And when you look at these maps, the biggest part of all these crosshatched areas on this map are already in place or finished, right? The smaller number of projects on here are the ones that are highlighted as commercial, industrial, and residential. So this motion today does not take into effect everything that has a colored box on the map. So I don't want people that glancing through to get the wrong impression of that. These 11 projects are scattered throughout the smaller ones here. The fact that we have so much public input, we just mentioned that, so I'm glad some people heard that we have that thoughtful process and that staff is doing the right thing. And I wish staff got the benefit of the doubt from the public because we know what their good work is like and our thoughtful approach. But each one of these developers are all going to have community engagement with their projects as they always do. They're going to make all those presentations, and I really do like the shared of information, but I just want to make sure that some of these uninformed false accusations, you know, when they actually get the facts in front of them, as you said, if somebody says something false about you and you don't correct it, then they're going to believe that they're right. And I just want to make sure people understand we're trying to do the right thing here.
Great, thank you. Yes.
Chairman, if I may, just to kind of close up the thoughts on this, was I think this might be the most forward-looking move the board has ever had when it comes to comprehensive planning. I will go ahead and put that out there. This is probably the most forward-looking move we've ever had when it comes to comprehensive planning, where you can do two types of planning. You can do piecemeal planning, where you just take the applications as they come and look at them individually, or you can look at the cumulative impacts of all of them comprehensively and see how they work together and develop a plan to see if you can accomplish the actual goals that you set out to accomplish when you created the DRGR. I think it also is important to keep in mind that the DRGR is actually something that is a creation of the Board of County Commissioners. It was created by commissioners in the late 80s, early 90s. It can be amended by commissioners today because it met the goals of back then, but the goals have changed now and the landscape has changed now. We've got all these applications coming at us now. So again, the question is, do you want to do things piecemeal or do you want to work things together? I think this could be the most forward-looking way of handling planning for this very critical area, and I really support what we're doing here. So that's.
And thank you for bringing up the history. That remember the only two areas of use for DRGR was mining or residential. So you have agriculture areas now being turned into either residential, and obviously we don't want mining, so residential is much less invasive to the water supply.
It's a great point. When you look at that map, Mr. Chairman, all those lakes that you see are not natural lakes. That's where lime rock mines had been created because lime rock mining was an approved use for the DRGR.
Right.
Farming was an approved use for the DRGR, and farming does disrupt flowways because they do create row crops and they disrupt the hydrology of the area. Farming also, while it's good, it's necessary. I love to eat. We all love to eat. Everybody loves food. Okay. Farming uses billions of gallons of water from the aquifer that now won't be used as those, convert to different uses. So thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
before that was creative, because before that in the 60s and 70s, we had things like where Lakes Park is, that was Harper Brothers mine. So going back, a lot of people don't realize Lakes Park, that beautiful park we have there, original park, was a mine pit at one time. And then as we go further east, you have the beautiful community, #1 community in the nation, Miramar Lakes was the next project there. And this goes on the list. And those projects all became, and then after that is when the county brought forward the amendments for the DRGR. So definitely good, make some good changes here. Any other discussion? We have a motion, we have a second. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks.
That was the consent. We move on to the administrative agenda. Number 28.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is to provide direction for Hurricane Ian CDBG-DR mitigation set-aside funding. I'd like to ask Mr. Sire to present that item.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. We have a two-part CDBG-DR item for your consideration today. I'm going to wait for the slide to come up here. The first part of this item asks you to consider the direction that we are going to take on FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program funding. You'll recall that the board reserved a little over $131 million to make the non-federal match for awarded FEMA HMGP projects. These applications were made by the county, municipalities, independent districts, and even LCEC, the school board, et cetera. And so that money was reserved to provide the 25% match that is required of the applicants. Now, we have been fortunate to secure a grant extension from HUD for our CDBG-DR funds, but that extension still limits the number of HMGP projects that can be accomplished within the grant period, and we'll review the graph in a minute that outlines that you've seen before. But suffice it to say for the moment that we really can only accomplish the number of FEMA HMGP projects that have already been awarded or will be in the very near term. And I'll talk about that again in just a moment. And so our recommendation is that the board limit the reservation of DR funding for HMGP match to those applications that are awarded by FEMA by May 1st. If we take that direction, we would be asking these HMGP applicants to then provide us with enough information to verify the feasibility of their projects within the CDBG-DR grant timeline. We would be asking for that information from these applicants by May 18th so that we can return to the board in June and get direction about any excess remaining funds that won't be an HMGP match. And we would take that in 2 steps. We would come to the first meeting in June, lay out the funding for you, as well as some potential options that you have, allow you to digest that, provide direction to us, et cetera, and then we come back in the second meeting in June for actual funding awards. At least that would be our proposal. And so if we could go to the next slide, please. You've seen this before. What this graph shows is the dark lines on this graph contemplate what we had originally planned for these HMGP projects. These applications were made in 2023 to FEMA, and had they followed a normal timeline, we could have accomplished these projects, at least most of them, by the end of the CDBG-DR grant period. As you well know, FEMA has been much delayed in making these awards, and so where we find ourselves now is what you see with the orange lines on this graph. And what we're showing you is the typical timeline that it would take to accomplish an HMGP project. These are lengthy projects because they require multiple steps of review from Florida Department of Emergency Management and FEMA. So even for those that have been awarded already, once they go through a design phase, they will have to go back through the review process again for the construction phase. And so that's why you can see, even if projects have already been awarded, if you look at that last orange line on the bottom right of the graph, those projects will still barely be accomplished by the end of this extended grant period. So that's the reason for the recommendation that we cut off matching funds as of May 1st. I think I will stop there and ask you have any questions, because the next part of the agenda item rests upon your decision here.
Any questions this time?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Excuse me. So I appreciate you getting the 2-year extension letter. Again, very effective meeting last week or last month. So I understand the placeholder of the May dates that you put on here and the reasons you laid out why. So when these projects come back before us, or before you, to shake down in May 1st, May 18th, and come back to us in June, we'll have a clearer picture of what that matrix looks like, correct? So.
Yes, sir. We will know what has been awarded by FEMA, and we will also understand project feasibility for each of those awards, whether or not they have a good plan to meet this timeline.
And some projects get built faster than others. Not everything takes 3 years to build. Some could be a 6-month project. I mean, there's a lot of variables in here like we did with these other housing projects. So I guess my biggest question is, when this, I understand having a target and a deadline on there, but when these projects come back before us, we're still going to have a chance to, I'll say, change our mind, so to speak, or based on that information then to make another upgraded, more informed decision on how we wanted to proceed with the timing ultimately on these projects. And you built in a little bit of cushion here in the last year, just so we have a little bit of wiggle room on this process, but we have to start somewhere, is what I'm trying to clarify.
Yes, sir. So I think what I would tell you about that is we really don't have much wiggle room because of the 2 phases that most of these HMGP projects will follow. In fact, it's going to be tight as it is. Now, could we continue to request additional extensions from HUD? Absolutely. That could possibly be in the cards. Don't want to rule that out. We are just simply trying to make an informed recommendation to you based on the timing of getting this money into the community, other projects that might be ready to go, that kind of thing. But
I know there's a lot of variables, and 99 out of 100 might be on target and easy next month, right? But there may be 1 or 2 exceptions or outliers that we want to contemplate or talk about, but we'll still have those opportunities for discussion.
yes, that would all be up for discussion in June.
That's all I'm clarifying.
Yeah, in June.
There may be none, right? But I just, there's one more bite at the apple before we.
I would say 2 more in June. 2 more in June.
2 more.
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Great. Any other discussion?
I'll move the item.
I'll second it.
The motion has a second. Any public comment on this item, number 28? No? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you. State County Manager?
There is a second part to the
Okay.
There's a second part to this motion.
Yes, sir. So if we can go to the next slide. So with that decision made, Commissioners, we would also recommend increasing funding for the Sanibel Fire and Matlacha Pine Island Fire District stations that are CDBG-DR funded projects. They both have active bids that expire, I think, one tomorrow and one next week. So normally we would have withheld this until June for your consideration based on your previous decision. But because of those expiring bids, we're making these recommendations now. Want to thank the fire districts for their collaboration on these projects. I think we've come up with a good solution here to get them under construction. And so this is our recommendation for increased funding for both districts.
I'll move this item as well.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment on 28, Section B?
I just want to point out, I want to thank staff for their support and direction for value engineering these projects and finding a way to help them be successful. And their original asks were higher than these, and they found a way to actually save money on the funds and accomplish the mission. So I wanted to thank our team for helping their teams have an even more successful program than originally intended last week.
Thank you. Any public comment on 28B? Come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Okay.
Thank you.
Number 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the awarded contract for federal lobbying services. I'd like to ask Ms. Mary Tucker to present the item.
Good morning. Mary Tucker, Director of Procurement Management. Before you is an agenda item regarding the award of services for federal lobbying. On March 19th, the county issued a request for letters of interest. The county received 4 responses from the following firms: the Ferguson Group, VSA, Capital Counsel, and the Reserve Component. Each firm will be allotted 5 to 7 minutes to provide a brief presentation, after which the board may ask questions. Following the presentations and discussion, the board will be asked to select one firm and make a motion for approval and authorize staff to enter into a contract with the awarded firm. Do we have any questions?
Any questions for staff before we start the presentations? Okay.
Okay, the first firm up is the Ferguson Group.
First. Okay. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Roger, and Commissioners, my name is Roger Gwynn. I'm the CEO of the Ferguson Group, and I've spent my career helping communities like Lee County secure federal resources and secure wins in policy and regulatory arenas. And we would certainly love the opportunity to rejoin your team and help you achieve your immediate objectives associated with the Cape Coral Bridge and other federal priorities.
And good morning. It's great to see you all, Commissioners. My name is Zach Israel. I'm a principal at the Ferguson Group. I've been at the firm for about 11 years now. I used to work with the county when we used to represent Lee County between 2016 and 2022. And I will be the lead from the Ferguson Group with the county if you decide to move forward with us. And then I just also want to mention our colleague Chris Cummins, who couldn't be here today, would also be part of the team as well.
So just to highlight a couple of things here. TFG has been in this space, been working for local governments for over 44 years. And the numbers before you, represent something specific. $350 million in earmarks since FY22 for our clients. We've helped our clients secure over $7 billion in competitive grants and loans across, and we've been active across 160 public agencies in 31 states. We're not a generalist lobbying firm. We don't just sort of dabble in representing local governments. This is our space. This is what we do day in and day out. This is a meaningful distinction, we think, when you're asking someone who understands your constraints, your accountability requirements, and what a federal win actually means to a community like Lee County.
So like I referred to earlier, we worked with Lee County for a number of years in the not too distant past, from 2016 to 2022, and we worked on issues ranging from flood insurance, which is still an ongoing issue for Lee County residents in the National Flood Insurance Program, core Everglades issues, transportation priorities. Certainly, we know the Cape Coral Bridge project is a huge priority for the county, and there's a lot of money on the line for you all currently. And we did help bring over $5 million in earmarks community project funding when they came back in 2021, working with Congressman Stubbe and his team at the time. And when we were in the thick of COVID in 2020 into 2021, we really worked very closely with your delegation and the Hill to bring all of the pandemic relief for Lee County specifically, $150 million in state local fiscal recovery funds at the time, which was an historic investment, went right directly to Lee County. And like Roger was saying, we have worked almost exclusively with local governments and public entities. This is what we do. And so we're going to hit the ground running for Lee County if we are hired by you all again. Building on our previous representation, we understand a lot of the issues and priorities for the county, and we have a lot of great working relationships with the Corps, with FEMA, with EPA, all of your water issues, and then executing on advocacy, grants, and appropriation strategies for the county, both in the short term and on a longer term basis.
In terms of federal relationships, access, we certainly, federal relationships are only as good as they are current and bipartisan, we think. TFG maintains active relationships with both sides of the Capitol, both parties certainly, the agency folks, both political appointees and the career folks. And as you folks know and have experienced in dealing with permit-related issues with the Corps of Engineers and things of that sort, those career folks are critically important. They're critically important for making those frontline decisions on funding. They're also obviously critically important on permits and regulatory matters and policy issues as well. I'll just highlight two other people that are on our team as well that are really important to this overall effort and would be important to the Lee County team. We have Earl Stockdale on staff, who's the former general counsel for the Corps of Engineers. Brad Schwichtenberg was a former regional integration team lead at the Corps headquarters, overseeing the South Atlantic Division. And worked very closely with the Jacksonville District Office and such. And so they're part of our team as well. Also, lastly, we are a strategic partner with ICMA. We are deeply embedded in this space. We are active within NACO. We're a sponsor of the National Association of County Administrators. And we're also the preferred grant provider for one of the preferred grant providers for the Florida League of Cities. So we're very active in pursuing and identifying federal, Florida state funding opportunities as well. Sorry.
So just very briefly, sort of a 90-day strategic advocacy outlook. If we were to work with Lee County again, we would meet with the county administration and all 5 of you individually to talk about your priorities. We would reconnect with the congressional delegation and all of the appropriate federal contacts, deliver the kickoff memo summarizing all of our priorities. That's the first month. And then we sort of phase to developing a federal platform agenda document, which is really important, sort of a blueprint that you all would vote on and approve, outlining what all your priorities are that we could refer back to in all of the advocacy outreach we do down the road. Identify specific grant programs we'd like to submit applications for, earmark requests, and all of those things. And then day 61 and beyond, advancing core permitting Everglades strategy and strengthening our relationship in DC for you guys. And then just very briefly in the last minute or so, I just want to reiterate some of the specific wins that we got for Lee County when we represented the county. So when earmarks came back in FY22, we secured $720,000 for the Bob James Preserve Restoration Project. And then the following year, $2.4 million for the North Lee County Wellfield expansion and $2 million for the widening of Burnt Store Road. And like I referred to earlier, with the American Rescue Plan Act, almost $150 million in state local fiscal recovery funds. That was, it feels like a long time ago, but that didn't just happen because of thin air. There was a massive advocacy campaign to get us to that point. And then in terms of Word of 2020, we got language for the Lake Okeechobee regulation schedule that we worked with the county and your delegation on at the time. We helped recovery efforts after Hurricanes Irma and Ian, and continuously advocated for core appropriations and other things in that space, beach renourishment, shoreline protection. So we have a lot of expertise in that area, and we would love to work with you all again and use our expertise to help the county. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Quick question. Are we going to interview and ask questions individually, or we're going to do it at the end?
Yeah, yes, it's the board's discretion if you want to ask questions right now, or you want to wait till the end. It's at your discretion.
Okay. If we're going to ask questions now, I have a question. I know Commissioner Wayne was anxious to get started with a lobbyist, and specifically for the Cape Coral Bridge $250 million grant. Tell us your strategy, if your action plan, if today was your day one, what would you do to help us with that project?
Well, it's a great question. We know you have your large bridge project, investment project application in with Federal Highway Administration. So what we would do, and I know you have meetings you want to do in DC next month, and so we would just ramp up immediately with scheduling those, both with the congressional delegation, with DOT, FHWA, as well as even the governor's staffer in DC. Every governor has sort of a lead staff presence in the Capitol to get everyone up to speed as to what the current status is of the project, and then also just making the case sort of behind the scenes of how to elevate it at this stage of the process. I know the application was submitted last summer, sort of near the late stages of the review process, but there are advocacy steps we can take to ramp up support for it behind the scenes in a way to get it over the finish line.
I would just add that we are, it's not just, it's been mentioned before in prior meetings about letters of support. Those are critical, from different parts of the community, but also those direct communications with Department of Transportation, with the Secretary, by your elected officials, and asking everyone really in the state to mobilize as much as possible behind this project to whatever degree that can be achieved. I mean, there's just those informal, direct communications to the White House, to the Secretary, are going to be critical at this point. We're assuming that you've passed that technical threshold of having a very qualified, eligible application before the Secretary, but the decision about what gets funded is then, is the Secretary's. And so mobilizing all of your resources, and that's a joint effort. It's not something, we can open doors, yes, but help you with scheduling, making sure you're talking to the right people, but really it's a joint effort of you helping us to all, or collectively identify those folks that can interact effectively with the administration and deliver a win for the county.
Any questions for them on the next presentation?
I just have one question, and honestly, I don't want to put either one of you on the spot, but obviously this firm did work for Lee County back in 2016. I wasn't here, so I don't know if you have any recollection of what they potentially did, or what your understanding was, if at all.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll share my recollection. Is I have nothing bad to say about working with them at all. I made a couple trips to Washington, D.C. working with them. They were well organized. They gave me good information on the topics that we were going to discuss with the people that we met with. Yeah, I recollect it as a good experience.
Good.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, same here.
Commissioner, may I make one comment too about the firm, how it's changed since our representation of the county? Just real quickly, we have expanded significantly our competitive grants practice. Back then it was just a couple of folks. So on the competitive grant side, in terms of helping the county on an ongoing basis, we have a full team now, 15 people that do nothing but competitive grants. And again, we're very active on federal and state grants here in Florida. Beyond that, we've had additional resources, like I mentioned, with Earl Stockdale, and some specific resources in Brad Schwickenberg that'll be really helpful, I think, with your core-related issues, your permit delays, and things of that sort, policy-related issues related to shoreline protection, things of that sort, and funding opportunities in that area as well. So we've expanded our team, too, since that time when we represented Lee County earlier.
Could I have a follow-up?
Yep, follow-up then, Commissioner.
Appreciate that. I know there's limitations and some things that we're unable to do relative to this $250 million grant. As far as how we advocate, my understanding is letters of support are more welcome, but talk us through how this grant is potentially a little bit different, and how do we work around the difficulties with this as opposed to the normal advocacy we do on a regular benign item.
Well, the only thing I can say, it's not, this is a higher level grant, so it's not really, it is not, the decision's not made by the state, the staff. The staff don't make, the staff within the Department of Transportation are not making the decision, the final decision on award. They are making a technical decision, assessment of the adequacy of the grant, that it ranks highly or not. And so if you're ranked highly, then you're automatically going to be eligible for consideration, go to the secretary's desk for consideration. Beyond that, what we would normally do if we had been working for the county beforehand is working ahead of the submission. We would get our grants team to supplement your grant professionals to, at a minimum, act as additional resources that could review and comment on what you had prepared, your staff had prepared. We also, because we have some of the best, honestly, we have the top transportation grant writers in the country on staff. Beyond that, we would be engaging the delegation, Department of Transportation ahead of time before you actually submitted to talk about, the importance of this project to the community, help create that story of why this is significant for the region, linkage to past events, and all of and the critical importance of it going forward for the county. So work with you in that way. Now where we are now, again, it's really kind of a fire drill. We're all hands on deck. What can we do to make this, to get this across the finish line? Again, working with you to identify folks that have special relationships that you're going to know better than we're going to know, to be honest with you, but that can have those interactions, make those phone calls that'll make it, and that direct communication is really what is needed here at this point to help elevate, the submission given where we are right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Blocum?
Just two quick follow-up notes. Since you mentioned you work with all these other government agencies like us elsewhere, do you have other clients that are competing for the same grant?
We do not. We have others that have competed for, build and other aspects, but this is not something that we actually don't have a client that's pursuing this particular opportunity right now.
Okay, well, to circle back on what you would have done if you had it from the beginning, if you already had somebody from the beginning that you were representing that was competing for the same
We've had folks
funds, I thought that was worth noting. And do you have any specific knowledge or workarounds of our peer application of what possibilities with NOAA or NIMS that we can navigate during the current climate? Have you specifically looked at that permit application process?
Oh, the permit? No, we have not. And frankly, it's just based on what we've read in the newspaper and, and watched, or watching your meetings, but, the references there to the challenges you've had, but haven't looked at the permit itself, no.
Gotcha. If I may, Chairman, I guess one of the things I like to ask, and I'll try to be consistent and ask everybody about this same thing, but talk to me about a scenario similar to what we're facing with our Fort Myers Beach pier permit. So where we find ourselves right now is we're waiting on an Army Corps of Engineers permit, and as much as we love to punching bag the Corps, which we do, I met with the Corps recently. In fact, as recently as last week, I was out there as they were making the big announcement about the EAA reservoir, and I talked with them, and they said, look, we want to move this forward, but it's at NOAA right now, it's at the National Marine Fisheries Association, it's at Fish and Wildlife and Commerce, and we can't, while we coordinate with them, we can't make them make a decision, right? And so I guess my question is, you don't have to speak to the specific permit, but how do you handle a scenario where we have to apply for a permit that's got to go through multiple federal agencies, and somehow our permit just gets stuck in la-la land, and here we are 2 years later waiting for a decision? Who could be the glue to pull this thing together and help us get to a decision? It doesn't even have to be the right decision. I hope it would be, but how do we get to a decision at this point? How do you handle scenarios like that on behalf of your clients?
We really engage all of the agencies that are involved in that effort. We're frankly on both sides of the aisle. We've been trying to stop a permit, in advance. But either way, you're really working with all of the agencies. So, if you've got EPA, you've got NIMS, whatever the agencies are that you're engaged with, you're talking to them, you're talking to the regional directors, and those are the political appointees, again, for those particular agencies. You're talking to staff, obviously, and you're working at all levels and doing it on a consistent basis. You've got the core, you want to certainly drive things and, be strong in their position, but you really do have to work it at all the different levels. And if it's not getting the attention that you need at the region, And frankly, we've had pretty good luck recently with this administration, working with the regions. They, generally speaking, want to advance, want to accelerate projects, don't want to stand in the way of these projects moving forward. So, raising it at that level is certainly can be successful, but if it's not, elevating it up to, in the case of NIMS, Tim Petty, even, at the Commerce Secretary, under the Secretary or Assistant Secretary level, or the Director of National Marine Fisheries Service, but elevating it up in that process is what we would normally do.
Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Harry, who's up next?
Next is the VSA group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, it's a great opportunity to be here. By the way, VSA stands for Van Squijk Associates. Stu Van Squijk is a good Dutch name, so I told them they could abbreviate as VSA. Hi, my name is Harry Glenn. I'm a Vice President of Van Squijk Associates. It's a great opportunity to be here in Lee County. Our firm, Van Squijk Associates, was established 35 years ago and is consistently ranked as one of the leading Washington bipartisan lobbying firms. We have an outstanding practice in the field of municipal governments and public entities. We represent 45 cities, counties, and other public entities, including 7 in Florida. But we tailor each of our engagements to the specific needs of those communities. So there's not one recipe that fits all the communities. We make sure they're tailored specifically to your needs. We have a bipartisan team with strong relationships with the Florida congressional delegation, with leading congressional members, committee chairmen, senators, members of Congress, and the White House. Oops. Our team for Lee County it has the right mix of senior congressional experience, senior agency experience, and close connections to the Florida delegation. I would serve as your team lead. Having been at Van Squijk now for 13 years, I served for 34 years in the House of Representatives working for Congressman Bill Young from St. Petersburg, Florida. I was his chief of staff for the last 19. He ultimately became chairman of the House Appropriations Committee and had great relationships with the Florida delegation, and we maintained them over the years. My colleague Jim Crum, another vice president of Van Squijk, unfortunately couldn't be here. He had minor surgery yesterday, so he apologizes. He came to Van Squijk Associates after serving in senior leadership positions at the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA. And we're supported by Will Smith and Maggie McCrane, who are directors of government relations. Will is an excellent writer and researcher. Maggie served both the House and the Senate and also with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. But the thing about Van Squijk is why you see the 4 pictures and the 4 names here. We have a firm of 60 legislative professionals, all with experience either on Capitol Hill or in federal agencies, or in some cases both. And all of those 60 personnel are available to the county whenever needed. Sometimes we need extra help with the Senate, sometimes we need extra help with an agency, and they all are available to the county as needed. The strengths we bring to Lee County is, as I mentioned, it's most important we have good relationships with your congressional delegation. The Florida delegation is an outstanding delegation to work with, even if they don't represent Lee County. They all pitch in and help each other's communities. They cover the gamut of all the committees in the House and the Senate, so they do a really good job for the county. So sometimes we call in other members of Congress, even if they're not directly relating to representing Lee County. We have a demonstrated record of success in our proposal of securing congressionally directed funding. We've secured more than $70 million for our Florida clients alone since earmarking returned in 2022. And we've listed those some of those projects in our proposal. We have an aggressive federal grant capture strategy that we develop for each of our communities and look at your specific needs. We don't do the cookie cutter approach and just send you notices of funding opportunity. We make sure we know what you need and keep an eye out for those kind of opportunities. And as I mentioned, we have a large municipal practice with over 45 government and public clients. And our firm as a whole all represent in some way or another public entity clients, and we're constantly sharing information about those clients. Our priorities, if we were so chosen to work with you, would be your priorities would become our priorities. And we know from your requests for proposals that the Fort Myers Beach Pier, the Alico Road Extension, and Cape Coral Bridge, you already talked about that earlier, are 3 of your major priorities right now. You mentioned permitting. We have extensive experience working with various federal agencies, including the Army Corps of Engineers, on permitting. We've gone through an 8-year ordeal with Pinellas County, Florida, to the north to get their shore protection program back on track. And we've gone directly to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works to get that off the stop right now. We're signing an agreement in May with the Corps of Engineers to get that project, $150 million project, back on track. We actually work with the city of Fort Myers on Legacy Island. We were first hired to work with the city. They were having a problem with the Corps of Engineers would not allow them to come back into Legacy Island and use it as a recreational island. So we worked with the Corps of Engineers to get their real estate people to grant a permit to move forward with Legacy Island. And in Pasco County, we actually worked with the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, and their permitting reform initiative to break a logjam that had taken 20 years to get a permit for a road through wetland area in Pasco County. It's a major hurricane evacuation route. We're able to work with President Trump's first team and, at that time, Governor Scott to secure a permit. So Ridge Road is now completed and open and providing service in Pasco County. We know that there are opportunities abound for Lee County going forward. Congress and the administration are currently looking at FEMA reform policies, which we know will have a huge impact on Lee County, given you're a coastal community. You mentioned the Cape Coral Bridge. The surface transportation bill is currently every 5 years, comes before Congress. This is the year it's up, and we need to make sure that the competitive bridge program continues to be funded in that legislation. So a key thing to do there. Congress is working in a bipartisan way on the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which is an opportunity to try and provide federal incentives to provide more affordable housing to communities. And every 2 years, Congress works on the Water Resources Development Act, which authorizes Army Corps of Engineer projects and is really important to coastal communities like yours. In closing, we've included in our proposal a full list and the range of services that we would provide. It's the comprehensive list of services that you're looking for, I believe. Federal legislative monitoring, developing a plan to secure congressionally directed spending, developing an aggressive federal grant capture strategy that's tailored specifically to your needs, assisting the county with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and other federal agencies, monitoring legislation and regulations that may impact you, developing relationships, continuing to develop relationships with the Florida congressional delegation, other members of Congress, staff, and the agencies, plan and execute impactful visits for you all to come to Washington. And most important to me, I think, is instituting a regular communication with the county and the leadership of the county. I think between telephone calls, virtual calls, written communication, that's the best way to ensure success with our clients. So we look forward to the opportunity to work with you and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
If I may, Chairman, I'll go, since I said I would ask everybody the same question. Talk to me again about the scenario where you talked about permitting during your presentation, but where you've got a county that finds itself, waiting on a permit. Seems like it's multiple federal agencies. We've got the project plan, designed, ready to go, but we're waiting on a permit. How do you break up that logjam?
Sure. Well, it's the right time. This administration is really committed to trying to do permitting reform. I think one of the major initiatives, I mentioned Pasco County. We work with Pasco County on their Ridge Road project. Their permit had been stuck for 20 years. When the first Trump administration came in, they wanted to secure a way to grant permits quicker. And the typical way the federal government issues permits is one agency reviews a permit and they approve the permit. Then it goes to the next federal agency and they approve a permit. Then it goes daisy chains all the way down until all the permits can be approved. And you may have 4 or 5 different agencies reviewing permits. The Trump administration is really focused on trying to eliminate that daisy chain effect and have them all reviewed simultaneously to try and get those together and making sure that one of the agencies, usually in this case the Army Corps of Engineers, takes the lead on that process. We were with the Assistant Secretary of Civil Works at a meeting in February, the day after he announced a new building infrastructure and paperwork initiative where he's trying to institute in his staff, and he's actually fired 2 of his colonels in his district offices around the country to institute a new policy where they are more aggressive about granting these permits and getting projects to construction faster. So he's made a commitment. He's worked with us on Pinellas County to get their logjam solved. And so I think, leaning into the White House to make sure their permitting folks, getting the intergovernmental affairs staff at the White House interested in the permitting process, we've done that. Going directly to the Army Corps of Engineers, to the senior leadership, not to career staff, is important. One of the Assistant Secretaries key staff members is actually from Fort Myers, so he's been a huge help on Florida projects. He knows Florida well. I used to work for Senator Rubio. He's been very helpful on several projects. So I think, and then leaning in with your congressional delegation. Obviously, you have a strong delegation with Congressman Donaldson, Congressman Stubbe, and Senator Scott and Moody. They all work really well together. Clearly, both Congressman Donaldson and Stubbe are well connected to the president. And this administration likes to be contacted directly, so I think going to the top and trying to break through the logjam is really important.
Thanks, Chairman.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm going to ask the same question I asked again. If you were hired today on day one, what would your action plan be for the $250 million Cape Coral Bridge Grant success plan?
Yeah, and so I admit I don't, since we haven't worked for you, I don't know all the steps you've been through, but I think the previous folks talked about it. The projects first go through a technical review. Hopefully you have a good project, make sure that the project gets to that next step where it gets to the political side. This administration is really focused on political decision making. So the Secretary, the Office of Management and Budget, and the White House all review large grants that are before them. So it's a multi-step review. So there's a lot of politicking that goes in these decisions. So obviously engaging Congressman Donalds to make sure that he reaches out and makes a call to Secretary Duffy would be important. Secretary Duffy's Chief of Staff, Pete Meacham, was a former colleague of mine, a Chief of Staff in the Florida delegation, so we know him well. So making sure they're aware of the project, making sure OMB is aware of the project. They ultimately have to sign off on these decisions, and making sure the White House is aware. This is a case where I think Congressman Donalds could pick up the phone and call the president and let him know this is a really important project to this community. And frankly, the current administration is very well connected to Florida, from Susie Wiles on down, James Blair and company. We have a lot of good Floridians for the first time in a long time in an administration. So I think having the opportunity to use that political influence to talk about important projects is what we need to be doing. Others are doing it. You have to be in there being just as aggressive as other communities to be successful. And I would say the other thing is, in the event that you're not successful at this project, we always make sure that our clients get a debrief after the competition is over. If you were not funded, we make sure you get a debrief from the Department of, in this case, Transportation. They're really good about telling you what was good about your application and what needs to be improved. And we find out if you resubmit, if you take the answers to the test and you use them in your next application, your success rate goes way up, and they appreciate the fact that you've listened to their advice. And I think the third thing on that is making sure that this new highway legislation that Congress is working on now continues to include funding and authorization for the competitive bridge programs. There were a couple years ago where the Congress eliminated funding for the program or instituted it in the last highway bill. So we need to make sure that program continues for future bridges.
And then one last follow-up to that same question as before. Do you have other clients that are competing for the same active grant that we're asking for?
Not for the bridge program, no.
Okay.
Florida hasn't done very, by the way, Florida hasn't done very well for the bridge program. Fortunately, Florida does a good job maintaining its bridges, and so a lot of the money has traditionally gone to states and projects that were for bridges that were more in very poor condition. So Florida sometimes doesn't compete well for these bridge programs. So that's another reason we have to get in there and advocate a little harder for Florida projects to make sure that they're listened to. Sorry, I'm sorry.
To tack on to his a little more, you have a lot more Florida clients on your list. So if one of them was also in the same competitive grant process, how does that play out for us in our representation?
I mean, I think we actually have two clients, the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority and the Port of Tampa, that both received build grant, which are among the most highly competitive transportation grants in the country. They both received build grants in 2021, so we work with both of them on those projects. So I think it's more important you understand the process, make sure that the community has a good project, a good application prepared, and that we advocate for it the same way. So I think the projects are what's really important, and I think the fact that we were able to get 2 in 1 year is indicative that we can do work with multiple communities.
Any other questions? Great, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mary, number 3.
The next one will be the Capitol Council.
Good morning. Thanks to the board for having this opportunity and your time. We appreciate it. I want to introduce myself. I'm Joseph Finello with Capitol Council. This are my colleagues here, George Safakis and Rob Diamond. We're here to talk about what Capitol Council can do to help Lee County advance their federal priorities. As Capitol Council continues to grow our Florida presence, we want to present to the county the best value for a cost-conscious government. That's while delivering the full suite of government affairs services that you would get from a top-tier firm like Capital Counsel. About the firm, Capital Counsel was founded in 2007 by a bipartisan group of federal advocates built from the start to serve clients across the administration and congressional leadership, consistently recognized as one of Washington's top advocacy firms with 50-plus professionals spanning Congress, the White House, and federal agencies. The firm's philosophy is collaborative. Lee County wouldn't be served by just one person. It would have a full bench engaged on its behalf. We'll work with your current priorities, but should something arise later in another business area that we're willing and able to immediately plug into other partners. For example, we have exceptional tax, trade, health, financial services, telecom, defense, and other practice areas, just to name a few. Central to everything we do is what we call the 3 Ps, the policy, process, and politics. On policy, we will partner with the county to develop its basic strategy, its best strategic approach, identifying the right federal program, the right legislative vehicles, and the right framing for each priority, reinforced by our significant public sector experience, including St. Petersburg, Florida. On process, we'll make navigating Washington straightforward, from congressionally directed spending, community project funding applications, and agency engagements to grant positioning. We handle the complexity so the county staff doesn't have to. On politics, we understand the current political moment and will help the county adapt your strategy in real time, whether that means shifting emphasis between the congressional and executive action or calibrating the messaging for the majority. We offer Lee County 4 direct services, securing CDS, CPF, that's earmarks, and appropriations for priority projects, positioning the county for federal transportation and infrastructure grants, navigating Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA permitting processes, and identifying and pursuing competitive grant opportunities across these areas. These aren't abstract capabilities. Each one maps directly onto a project or priority that you guys have already discussed in your working group here at Commission. The Cape Coral Bridge, the Alico Road Extension, Fort Myers Bridge Pier are all live examples where we think this work begins immediately, and we're ready to jump into action on those. Lee County taxpayers are contributors to the federal treasury, and our job is to help ensure that those dollars find their way back to the communities that generated them in the form of infrastructure investment, disaster recovery resources, and public services. Our proposed partnership is built around 3 phases: strategy, engagement, and results. Strategy, that's developing a tailored federal legislative and funding strategy aligned with the county's infrastructure and recovery priorities and hitting the ground running. Engagement, executing outreach across Congress and relevant federal agencies, armed with a clear ask and compelling case for each project. And results, supporting the county's priority initiatives, monitoring relative grant opportunities, and a constant line of open communication so the board always knows where things stand. In practical terms, this means advancing projects like a Cape Coral Bridge replacement and the Alico Road Extension across every available federal lane and helping cut through federal bureaucracy that is currently holding up projects where there's a permitting issue, like the Fort Myers Bridge Pier. Beyond infrastructure, we see an opportunity to broaden the partnership, including public safety, law enforcement, veteran services, and other areas where federal dollars can serve county residents. Ultimately, our goal is to become part of your team, helping each of you think critically and proactively about a new or evolving federal opportunities as they may emerge. Lee County would be served under our proposal by a dedicated team of 6 partners backed by Capital Counsel's full bench, our 50+ that I mentioned earlier. We're happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with 2 of my core members for this work. The team was assembled deliberately, covering legislative, appropriations, and executive branch engagement. The 3 of us here presenting today lead the engagement. That would be me, Joseph Iannello, the appropriations chair and legislative director for the firm, George Stefakis, who leads our current executive branch practice, and Rob Diamond, our co-lead on the executive branch practice strategy. I want to note we have a deliberate bipartisan balance to adapt as anything may change in politics. So on my own background, I'm a former House Appropriations Associate Staff and Legislative Director for the Hill. Really worked with a wide variety of clients, including in municipal, public space, and also corporate, a whole variety of other regulatory items that can be addressed by the funding process and delivering, whether it be dollars and cents or regulatory environments. And I want to go to my colleagues to introduce themselves. George.
Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be presenting here today. I had the privilege of working for President Trump in the first Trump administration. I was the first director of public liaison, the front door to the White House, where we engaged with all external stakeholders, counties, cities, you name it, companies, NGOs, as the front door to the White House, and then mapping out and connecting the dots internally in the administration to make sure that we could solve issues or address issues or have any issue addressed with any agency, organization within the federal government and the administrative branch. In addition to the engagement with the White House proper. In addition to that, I worked for President George W. Bush for the entire first term. I was the first politically appointed director of the EDI earmarks at HUD and managed approximately $3.5 billion of economic development funds that went to cities, counties, et cetera, like Lee County. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be here today to hear your questions about how you connect the dots and how you solve problems by advocating for critical priorities, which you have and you're addressing here. Thank you.
And Rob Diamond, also a pleasure to be with you, partner of Capital Counsel firm for the last 6 years. I'm partnered with George to lead our executive branch practice. And as George leads our Trump administration work, I focus day to day on agency level relationships, particularly on the discretionary grant side, program office side, the intergovernmental affairs work across the executive branch. I served as special assistant to the president, director of private sector engagement in the White House for 4 years under President Obama, so we bring a bipartisan approach to our executive branch work as well. Pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you for your open and transparent process here and inviting us to come present before you, and we're ready to be on your team, and we hope you're ready to have us on your team. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Mr. Hammond?
Well, let's talk about that permit.
This question before.
They got the answer now.
I was going to say, I think you got it. You know, the context that I'll add, when I recently did go to Washington to talk about the permit, I went right to the White House IGA team. That was my first meeting, because I thought if somebody needs help with a permit in Lee County, right, they come to the commissioners to tell us about it, but we're going to go right to our county manager, our executive branch, and find out where is it stuck in the process and what can we do to get to a decision. So that was my thought. What is your thought on, you know, how do you know Susie? Do you know James? Do you know the folks in the executive branch currently? I realize you were there for Trump 1. Are you still engaged in Trump 2? And how do we break these log jams up where federal agencies don't talk to each other?
Well, you know, that's I can start, you know, the answer to this. In Trump 1, in 45, as we like to say, we had something called the transition from sequential to concurrent review in permitting and process. And it was simply that you can do concurrent review and cut the time of these projects by 15, 20 years in some instances. In addition, going directly to the White House is especially in this 47 administration, is efficient, especially, you know, the offices you've already referred to. Yes, we're familiar with this administration. I lead the executive branch practice, so we engage with this 47 President Trump administration quite often on issues that range the gamut to be able to help advocate and tell the story. I mean, it's about the story. What is happening? How can we solve the issue? And this administration is dedicated to solving issues. It's about what I always advise is common sense. It's common sense to move something forward that's a priority for the county that makes sense. And it's transparent. And I want to echo, we appreciate your transparent process here. Deeply grateful for that. I don't know if you want to add anything about it.
No, I think it's getting everybody in the room, making that ask to the White House to be the convening authority. Their role is to be that interagency convener. So it's not enough to just meet with the White House on a one-off, but the ask to put everybody in the room together, use the policy components for what their role is. Again, interagency coordination and function. And so making sure you can get those, not just talk to the White House about it, but leverage the White House to do that, make the same ask of the Assistant Secretary of Civil Works, Pentagon, be the convener of these agencies, as opposed to you just having to run around and do these one-off conversations with everybody and getting a lot of, it would be great if we could all work together, but you've got to bang the heads together and put them all in a room.
I want to reinforce one other point on that, Rob and George, thanks for that. Just engagement with the legislative delegation too, with the Florida delegation is so critical on any of these issues, because we can be our own advocates and you guys are exceptional advocates in your own right, but sort of using that relationship to make sure that they're calling. It's not just us saying, it's important to us as a county or us as, a firm. The elected officials who are relying on those things, those issues coming through are being put to use there, and that's that.
Yeah, it is true. It is true that the squeaky wheel gets the grease in this line of work, and so the more noise you can make with the delegation, the more the phone keeps ringing to say, "Where is this?" That's
And just to add to that, as the former director of public liaison, I mean, that was our role. I mean, you came in, you had an issue, we then triaged it. So how do we solve this issue? How do you walk down the hall to Intergov or to Cabinet Affairs or OMB? OMB in this administration is a very central role in a lot of these issues. So, how do you triage it? How do you tell the story? And how do you use common sense to get to the finish line? That's what this is all about.
Questions?
Well, again, we keep asking the same questions so everybody can answer them. What would your action plan be on day one to help us with the Cape Coral Bridge funding?
Yeah, I'll take that, sir. And frankly, you've been well served by previous answers by Roger and Harry. I mean, ultimately, a grant of this size is a political decision, as you've heard from previous presenters. That's absolutely a fact. So this is made at the level of Secretary, with White House input and at the Office of Management and Budget. And so making sure you're engaging politically is, at the end of the day, the answer. Again, assuming the grant has met all the technical requirements, assuming it is moved up through the process at DOT to be recommended to the Secretary, this becomes a closed-door decision to award something of that size. And so making sure that our engagement collectively is focused at that political level, at the White House and at the Secretary. In addition, making sure that the delegation, as Joe said, people are picking up the phone and saying, this is my priority. We need this money. And working with the delegation to make sure that they can deliver that message is critical. But again, you're well served by all the answers that this is ultimately a political decision of the highest level. So.
Sure. Well, again, I'm trying to be fair. Everybody has a chance to answer the same questions, but if there's a horse race, we want to win it by a nose. And we're trying to support Kevin's trip next month, and that's where some of this immediate action questions are coming from. But I understand the strategy and the relationships, and our president is certainly not indecisive. So we just need to get him to the table. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And your final group is the reserve component.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Pendergrass and members of the Lee County Board of Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is George McElwee, and I'm president and founder of the Reserve Component. The Reserve Component is a veteran-owned, bipartisan lobbying firm based in Washington, D.C. We were built to give our clients strategic advantage into navigating Washington, drawing experience from Capitol Hill, the administration, the private sector, and my military service. We represent municipalities, nonprofits, associations, and companies, helping them achieve tangible, measurable results at the federal level. As I mentioned, my name is George McElwee, president and founder. I bring 25 years of experience to Washington, including nearly a decade on Capitol Hill and 9 years serving as chief of staff to a senior member of the House Appropriations Committee, and nearly 2 decades as a federal lobbyist. I also continue to serve in the United States Navy Reserve as a public affairs officer. I am joined by my colleague, Katie Haslett, who will introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katie Haslett. I have the pleasure of serving as Senior Vice President at the Reserve Component. I bring 14 years of experience working on Capitol Hill. I worked for the Chairman of Appropriations as his Chief of Staff and also as a Senior Policy Advisor to the Committee on Appropriations. After I left there, I spent 2 years in the first Trump administration as a political appointee. Both of those years were at the Department of Energy. I first served as the Chief of Staff for the Chief Financial Officer, responsibility for a $40 billion budget and 150 person staff. From there, I went to, my last year was with the Intergov office and also congressional, so the lead lobbyist for the administration to the Capitol Hill, but also responsible for communicating with externals and and meeting with communities and counties like your own. I would say on that front and that experience, I got to sit in those seats where you are taking those calls that we're talking about. You're the person that folks are calling to try to advance their grant through. So I certainly have some insight into how that process works. And now I've been with George at his firm for 5 years, lobbying, representing a variety of clients.
Great. We are a full-service lobbying, federal lobbying firm. For Lee County, our work would focus on three areas: federal advocacy and appropriations, legislative and funding tracking, coalition building, and stakeholder engagement. This ensures you're not just informed, but positioned to act at the right time. There are a few reasons why clients choose TRC. The first, Katie and I are your team. From strategy to execution, you are not handed off. We remain directly engaged. Second, we don't represent any municipalities in Florida. As former chiefs of staff, we understand how competitive federal funding can be. Many firms represent multiple municipalities and compete for the same dollars. We do not. That means that we advocate for Lee County. There are no conflicts, only focus. At this point, I'll turn it over to Katie to walk through our approach and additional capabilities.
So obviously, the main thing we're talking about today is funding, and we certainly do that, but we bring more to the table than just that. So obviously, there's a lot of legislation going on that could influence some of your priorities. You've heard it mentioned from others, but for other municipalities that we represent, not in Florida, we're certainly tracking Surface Transportation Reauthorization, Water Resources Development Act, which is the Army Corps of Engineers, and then also the Farm Bill for all your rural needs, and the National Defense Authorization Act, where you often see overlap and opportunities for communities that also have a military community presence. Outside of that, we're always tracking grants and teaming and linking up our municipality and county clients with opportunities. Right now we have multiple clients going after some of these opportunities we pointed out. I know the EDA FY25 disaster supplemental is a big one, definitely in the southeast United States, where a lot of folks were impacted by hurricanes and other natural disasters. So that's one we're actively working on, and also the BRIC program as well out of FEMA. We have some folks going after. When we came to you, we looked, of course, at where you've been past successful with your past earmark or community project success, and you certainly have a lot. Of course, we're going to be looking forward to future and what we can do for Cape Coral Bridge replacement and the Pier project, among others. But one thing we don't want to forget is where you've been successful in the past, and making sure we're being responsible partners in closing out those projects as well. To be able to partner with agencies in the future, and also to have members continue to represent your request your projects. You need to really deliver on what you've already received, and that's one thing we want to make sure to go back and revisit in that first 30, 60 days, all the funds you've gotten in the past and where those projects stand, so we aren't caught off guard with any of those negotiations. We're just going to highlight a few clients, community clients that we've been able to help real quick. City of Aberdeen in Maryland, city of 20,000 people, so not at all like Lee County, but they do represent also in the district a military installation that brings another 20,000 into the city every day. Since we've represented them over the last 5 years, we started off with a $4 million earmark for a train station project, and since then have also helped them receive 2 grants, one from the RAISE grant program at DOT and one at the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods grant. Besides that, Amtrak, the federal partner there on this train station, had originally shelved a project, a $50 million project. It's not reflected on this slide, but they've now also picked that up off the shelf and have started re-engaging with the city on that. We expect construction to start on that in 2027. So not only were we able to go after grants, earmarks, but now we have this new connection that they never had before with Amtrak, bringing their own dollars to the table. We've also helped them with water infrastructure. There's a legacy project there, which at one time owned by the Department of Defense, no longer. It's 300 dwellings that have little to no water pressure that comes through every day. It's an $8 million project. We've been able to help them get a $2 million earmark. They also have a memorandum of understanding with the Army Corps that they did not have previously. So those are just some small wins we've been able to accomplish for a much smaller community. We also represent the city of Kenner. Kenner is about 60,000 folks, but they are also home to the New Orleans Airport, which has about 10 million, a little less than that, travelers come through it every year. So that while they're a small city, they very much could be considered a large county when you have that many folks coming through throughout the year. Their water infrastructure and transportation infrastructure is constantly challenged due to having that infrastructure in in their city. So last year, we were able to get them $8 million, which is a very high earmark for community-directed spending to get going on this sewer system project. We also have a $20 million grant application in with EDA and Department of Commerce, so we're working those avenues. One thing, obviously, we're focused a lot on funding, but any county also has a big federal nexus outside of just funding. You have your Social Security Administration, you have your post offices, you have your prisons, and anything else that you can think of under the federal umbrella. We're also there to help be your liaison. Kenner's one example. They had a sewage issue coming out of the post office for years, been going on for 2 years. They brought it to our attention. We brought it right to the members of Congress. It was fixed within weeks, something that had been going on for 2 years. So you think of us as your partner, but not just for funding, but anything that has a federal nexus. I'd say here also, outside of that federal nexus, also industry partners. Kenner has the CN Railroad that goes through their community all the way up to Canada, and they had issues where it wasn't being taken care of. So we used our connections and folks we knew to get CN on the phone. We set the mayor up with the CEO, and they no longer have those problems. So that's just another way where we can be helpful with those links to other folks. I'll say here in Fort Myers, we do represent Granite Construction, which has a water resources office here, and we also represent WSP. They're a global engineering firm that has an office here in Fort Myers.
And I will be brief going through the next few slides, but we also represent the Port of Philadelphia, and going on to some of the things you were talking about with the porting issues.
Yes, sir. I apologize.
Okay.
But do we need to, just to stay consistent with everybody, need to keep it on time?
We are using the timers now? Okay.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah.
That's fine.
Just wanted to make sure we're fair with everybody, but thank you for the great presentation. And so you already know the question, but talk to me about it. It sounds like you have some IGA experience as well then with the White House previously. How do we get the right people in the room to get to a decision on permitting when you got multiple federal agencies trying to review something?
Sure. I think there's two things here on this one. I mean, we've talked about the Trump administration. They're a team. They like to be thought of as a team. You go to the person in my seat, and we start linking them together. I think you definitely go to the politicals first, and then this administration's created something called the Permitting Coalition or the Permitting Task Force. I think you really go to them and utilize that as well. And they were created to get through these log jams and make sure that you're engaging with those types of resources that the administration's put out there.
Yeah, I'll even mention just to this slide too, what we're doing with the Port of Philadelphia. We were brought on really to help them with one of their issues that they had with, actually, they received a large grant from the federal government. They weren't able to actually utilize that grant right away because of some of the Build America, Buy America requirements. We were able to engage the senators and also their delegation immediately so that they actually have a very good chance of getting that waiver now. And even with what we're talking about here is, we were able to bring in the administration officials to the port itself because they were having challenges even getting recognition there.
Thank you. Thanks, Chairman. Any other questions?
So the bridge action plan,
Yeah, I think definitely, obviously, what my colleagues have said is you go right to the Secretary's office. But I will say one thing about this administration is, what was previously impossible is now possible. So yes, you're so focused on this one grant program, but when you bring them this issue, I don't think you just have to focus on this one grant. They've been able to open doors that weren't previously open or opportunities that didn't previously exist. So go and, yes, support on this project, but also check that box where you're informing them so they can give you other opportunities that you might not have even known were available or anybody knew was available. And the second thing I would say is just that echo chamber, that coalition, they shouldn't only just be hearing from you. They should be hearing from everyone that's affected by this project, from tourism to industry, really to just knock their doors down. That's what I'd say.
And I would just say, look, we have the same issue with one of our clients too. We're trying to actually make sure we're trying to expand and reauthorize a program that actually has brought $1.2 billion worth of investment to the state of Florida and over 30,000 jobs. This EB5 program is critical not just to what's actually happening in industry, but also with critical infrastructure too. So we actually went in recently, and I actually just realized I'm wearing the same suit and tie. So, so what does that say? This is a very recent photo of going to the Secretary and actually talking about the critical infrastructure needs around the country and what EB5 that program does for it around to actually help.
I noticed you said twice the prior administration, so I know you're up there working every year after year, and you see administration changes and stuff. We've been up there a lot over the last 10 or 15 years ourselves in different capacities, but did you notice the same? I wasn't sure if you see the same thing we saw in the last 4 years before this current administration, where you said you couldn't get doors open, right? So basically staff wouldn't even really talk to you too? I mean, because I thought maybe it was just a political thing, but even there working during the Biden administration, was it hard to get things done then?
No, I'm sorry, I was referencing, I was in the first Trump administration.
Okay.
Was it harder to get things done through the Biden administration? We had successes with folks as well there. We are a bipartisan firm. We have Democrats on staff as well. I think you have to be ready and willing to adapt. I think this administration is specifically different because the process isn't always being followed that we all know, and they're creating a new process. So it just brings new opportunities, and you just have to be ready and willing to think outside the box with them, for sure.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Just, I have one business question follow-up that I didn't ask anybody else, but your fee proposal was half as much as everybody else's. Basically, we're all on par. Why is that?
One, I think we're a small firm, but we also respect you as a steward of the taxpayer dollar. We know we can do that same work for that price, and so that's why we put it out there. We don't have the overhead as other firms do. And so when we talk about the size of the firms, that comes with an expense and a cost. We know that we will be your direct representatives in Washington, D.C. We know what our capabilities are and actually what our strengths are with the administration, with Congress, and so we know that we can do it for that cost.
All right, well, respectfully, if we're your first client in Florida and for $5,000 a month, are we going to be important on your radar?
Oh, yeah.
One fringe,
and I think if
one fringe client in the entire
focus
state.
on one thing here is we actually work very closely with the Florida delegation. So we work with actually Congressman John Rutherford and Marco Rubio to introduce a bill called the Helper Act, which is actually for housing for cops, firefighters, teachers, EMTs, and paramedics. And that was a bill that we've actually now gotten over 150 supporters. We moved from that when Senator Rubio became Secretary of State. We went to Senator Moody immediately. It was the first bill she introduced in the Senate when she came in. So we work with the delegation. You can see from the Florida supporters we have, those are because of contacts that we've made from our office. We are on boots on the ground, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or it'll be in Florida. We'll be doing the work to get what you need.
All right, well, I had to ask the question.
But you had to ask the question. I'm glad I was able to show the slide.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That is the conclusion of presentations. Now, if the board wishes to have a discussion about the firms, staff is requesting that you select one firm and authorize us to enter into negotiations and a contract with them, if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mary at this time?
Are we actually going to do like a score sheet or rankings or?
We didn't do score sheets. You actually have two different ways you can do this. If the majority of the board has one firm that they are most interested in, you can just pick that firm. But if you are wanting to do a type of score sheet, we can rank them if you want to write them down, first through fourth, we can tally those up. But we wanted to leave that up to you. But if there is one firm that stands out to you the most, then you can vote on just that one.
So we can so it could be a motion from the dais here for one firm.
Yes.
Correct. Will the board produce a score sheet or make a motion for one of the four?
Who wants to go first? If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll just share some thoughts. I don't know that I'm going to share a favorite right off the bat. I want to have a discussion with everybody. My thoughts were, first of all, thank you so much for coming down and presenting. I hope that you found it beneficial just to be able to present and get a chance to talk about this subject with us, because I know I certainly did. The letters were all well written and very comprehensive, but to see everybody in person, to hear your different approaches, I was impressed by each firm. I honestly think we'd be served well by all four firms. I mean, I don't think there's a wrong decision today, but unfortunately we will have to choose just one today. I definitely would say where my head's at is, if you look at the current presidential administration with President Trump, he has filled his administration with people from Florida. Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, is from Florida. You look at James Blair, who's from Florida. He's right underneath Susie, his political guy. I think that, obviously the president lives in Florida now. I think that I would be looking for a firm that has strong Florida history and Florida connections. I was impressed that, with BSA, we have somebody who's been a chief of staff in a Florida congressional office, and not just a Florida congressional office. Bill Young was very influential during his time in Congress. And then you also got the Capitol Council, though, somebody who's worked for Trump administration one, and you've got that experience there. That team that he's talking about, the public liaison team, I went right to the IGA team when I went up there just 2 weeks ago. That team was exactly as was described here. They build themselves as, we will be the conveners, we will be the problem solvers, work with us to help get all your meetings scheduled and that kind of stuff. And so I was impressed that that seemed to track too. So I would say if there were two that kind of stood out right now, just based on my most recent visit, those two tracked with me, but all four would be good.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for being here. Again, all very talented, experienced people, and I appreciate the experience and getting to hear your perspectives. And again, all top shelf firms. And it's not easy to interview on camera in front of your competitors. So I appreciate that. I mean, that's difficult. So, but I do appreciate everybody being here. One of the firms that stood out in my impression was Capital Counsel as well. And I wrote down the word convener. That was something that struck me as a valuable asset, and their front door, opening the front door to the White House and being a convener of all the departments to get their heads together and get actions resolved, right? Most of these federal permits, like the pier and a lot of their marine construction permits I've chased over the years, the answer is rarely no. It's just when they're going to say yes, right? So you have to get those things moving. So having those relationships and connections with the two Trump presidencies and then GW as well, I mean, those struck highly to me. So that was the first impression.
I appreciate all the feedback that we got. I think one of my concerns is, and maybe it's something we can like flush out a little more, is just that, like you said, we want the Florida roots base because we want that level of representation. But my concern is also too when you see a lot of other municipalities and local governments on another client list. So I just run into that where, I want to make sure our projects that we're bringing are going to be the ones that are the first on their list. And I think that's just one of my own personal concerns. I don't know about you guys, but I want Florida roots, but I want to make sure that like there is a priority being set for Lee County. And that's kind of the whole point, I thought, to getting our lobbyists so that we could be a priority at the Capitol. So.
Okay, I'll go ahead and speak up. I initially, a few weeks ago, I said I wanted to go back out for a few more weeks to have some more vendors come in to look at. But based upon what we have before us today, my first choice would be Van Scoria and Associates, and my second choice would be Ferguson. So just throw that out there for now.
I appreciate everything and everyone that's come here. Did a great job. I certainly share Councilwoman's comments about Florida and the concentration in there. I also just am most concerned about making sure we're the priority. This is important to us, to say the least. I certainly, have a preference, more like Commissioner Hammond, where BSA and Capital Counsel seem to be my priorities. But again, each firm brought something to my mind that I thought would be germane and helpful to this process. So those are my considerations.
To your point, we may not be your only customer, but we're the only ones we care about.
Right.
So.
Well, unfortunately, we're not be the only one. But if you look at,
Is it easier just to eliminate, and I hate using that word, but is it just easier to try to narrow the focus so we could have a specific conversation with one or two firms?
I like that idea.
Like I identified two, Commissioner Hammond identified two, Commissioner Pendergrass identified two. I don't know if either of you have two that you would focus in on. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I guess I just did.
Well, I think you did.
And I didn't want to, but I got to do this.
That's our job. Okay. So to that end, I would say first choice would be Capital Counsel, second would be Ansoik. My short list.
I'm torn. I do love the past history coming from Ferguson, but I really do like what Capital and Reserve had to say. So Capital and Reserve are my top two.
Well, then judging by that, I had capital, you had capital, you had capital, you had capital.
I was going to make a
Pretty common
motion.
thread to that.
Yeah,
I was going to make a motion, we move forward with capital council.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just part of the motion would also be to formally waive procurement procedures. So if we could add that.
I would gladly waive.
state the motion. You could ask him to state it then, and then you just make.
You want to be specific, I don't want to miss any of the words you'd like me to have in the motion. If you could state it, I'll certainly
Mr.
reiterate.
Chairman? Just simply that the board formally waives procurement procedures and directs staff to enter into contract negotiations with Capital Council and bring a contract back for board ratification.
That sounds perfect. I couldn't say any better. That's my motion.
I will amend my second accordingly.
Okay, we have a second?
Motion?
Yeah,
Motion.
second. Any public comment on that action? Come back to the board, any other discussion?
Again, I mean, that was a horse race,
Well done.
if there ever was one.
Really well done, yeah. We need public comment, did we take?
Yep, I just said,
Okay.
comment, no comment, come back to the board. Any other discussion? Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
No pressure, but we're counting on you.
Lots of emphasis. Lee County.
Let them clear out.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, we have no public hearings on the agenda, and we have no walk-on carryovers. Going over to commissioner items. No, go ahead. I have a couple things to bring up here. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. Last meeting, we had discussed about the funding for the chambers. There was 3 chambers, actually, that had funding requests for contingency based upon the storm damages. I went back to TDC Council. They had no objection. We talked about it, but there was no action taken. There was no vote there. They're very supportive. So I'd like this time to make a motion to have funds allocated for the Fort Myers Beach Chamber, the Sanibel Chamber of $200,000 each, and the Greater Pine Island Chamber of $60,000.
I'll second that.
We have a second, Commissioner Wayne. I knew you were going to talk about it too, so thank you.
I appreciate it.
It's all, we're all working together on this issue. And is there any public comment on that? I know some of the chamber guys are here, but thank you for your support. Thank you for your patience.
I think it's great the whole team's looking out for the entire county on these matters.
Right, everybody was supportive of the TDC. I just wanted to let them know about it and talk about it, so. No public comment. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries.
I do have a commissioner comment.
Yes, sir. Okay, one more thing. I was going to make
Are you
a...
going to put me on the spot again?
Huh?
Are you going to put me on the spot again?
No.
So, sorry I didn't advertise this earlier. It's something I was talking to staff about the last few days and talking to staff again this morning. I was just making, is this board be entertain a motion to cancel the workshop, the scheduled day at 1:30 today at this time. Just cancel the workshop.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
I'll second it.
We have a second? Any public comment on the cancel of the workshop today? With the board, any objection, any discussion? Okay, thank you. County Manager? Good, we're going to make sure we notice that, put something on the door just in case people show up, because it was advertised?
Correct.
Great, thank you, I'm done. Commissioner Wayne? Councilman?
Yeah, so, you know, I've heard some objection to a conversation we've had. It's about term limits for the constitutionals. And for the record, I am a big believer in term limits. When I was in Sanibel, we didn't have term limits in 17. Having served 12 years, I said that my term was done. So I support that. I support everything you do. The problem I struggle with is the constitutional side. We don't seem to have an abundant amount of power over their budgets. They seem to need the ability to push back. I just don't know if it's just a reach of having this. I've heard very strongly from the Sheriff's Office about the Sheriff's Association looking at this very carefully. I've heard this would be litigated for a long period of time. I just don't know how I feel about getting into a confrontation over something that, although it's within our budget, it certainly seems like it's something that we don't have as much authority over as I'd like to. So it's just a concern, and
Yeah.
I can't talk any other way.
Yeah, when we first put this in the workshop, I wanted to move forward with the item then, I still do now. I understand throughout the process, we'll probably hear from different associations and stuff, but, you know, we did this, 12 years ago. Commissioner Hammond brought that up here, and we understood probably somebody would oppose. It can't make everybody happy. We didn't hear anything from FAC or Association of Counties and the other groups, but At the time, though, I think everybody's saying let the voters decide. So I think that's a new thing now. Everybody's saying let the voters decide. If it came down to it, we see there's going to be a big fight with one group, say the Sheriff's Association, which I support the Sheriff's Association. I understand they have issues statewide they usually focus on. I think they're going to see that probably happen statewide anyway. The state will probably do this in the near future, probably for all the counties. But for 12 years, and I talked to the sheriff personally about it, I don't think he was personally affected by it, but I can see why the Sheriff's Association would be worried about it is long-term of the other 67 counties. But I thought they had actually had term limits with sheriffs from different counties and stuff. But at the end of the day, term limits, and my goal of this was that when we talked about this, I think Commissioner Melissa brought it up, it wasn't pointing it based upon budgets or somebody's actions because somebody did something or didn't do something. It's about that bigger point of government. We have term limits, the state has term limits. Why the constitutionals, we've had some constitutionals stay in office here over 40 years at one time here, and there's nothing wrong with that. If the voters are happy with that person, they keep voting them in, that's fine. But I think seeing that, we did it 12 years ago, was because you see some counties and cities that didn't have term limits, and probably not for us personally, but for the future elected bodies, how it's going to affect the county, and that's why I was supportive of when we brought it up, when Commissioner Malika brought this item up, because I hadn't heard of any type of litigation or anything like that. Have we been served, County Attorney, with any type of litigation, any requests or anything from the Sheriff's Association or any other association, private appraisers, anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, we've not heard anything formal from any of the associations. As you're aware, and pursuant to board direction, Mr. Harner and I did meet with the 4 out of the 5 constitutional officers. Those discussions went fairly well. Each constitutional officer in their own respect did not actively oppose because I think they realized that the implications on their individual status would be minimal. We did have some discussions about statewide associations, the Sheriff's Association in particular, right, paying close attention to this matter. And as we previously discussed, when the matter came up, it was our belief that any challenge would not necessarily come from a Lee County constitutional officer, but perhaps from one of their state associations, given the state implications.
Right. It wasn't. I don't think it was introduced by our board. It was to hurt anybody or anything. It wasn't kind of like when we brought it up in 2012 or 14, Commissioner Hammond, if I remember right. That's why we made it 12 years starting the next election cycle. So the people currently in office would not be affected till, if it passed on the ballot in 26, it wouldn't start to get affected at 28 or 30 election cycle. If they get elected in 26, they wouldn't start counting until the year 2030, and then we have 12 years from 2030 to 2042 before that person is termed out, as we are not termed out until 2030, because the clock started ticking in 2018. So I understand, Commissioner Wayne, I was concerned about that too. I haven't heard that from anybody, so thanks for sharing that with us, because I haven't heard anything about that. So. Anybody else have any comments?
Well, yes.
Hey, the motion maker?
Thanks for putting me on the spot again, Kevin. I'm just kidding. No, the whole point of this was, I think when we talked about term limits, you have been very proud of the term limit bill that you passed together, and you're running for your last term in office now. The 12-year term limit, I think everybody said we had unanimous support in the workshop and in our last meeting to direct it to public hearing, which again is another chance for the public to have input on this subject. So we're talking about it now is for part of the discussion that I think we should just have on May 7th would be my first choice. But the whole point of the term limits was to have opportunity and not have career politicians in Lee County. We had some 32-year clerks and 40-year property appraisers, and we all know them. And there are some people in this business that retire before they leave office, right? You've seen that across multiple government agencies. I'm not picking on those two specifically when I say that, but I'm just saying fresh eyes, fresh legs, help in this position. And when you have term limits, it is really hard to unseat incumbents, right? And for somebody that wants to serve or wants to be an up-and-coming, the next person to be in service on our board or in these offices, to know that there's an open seat at some point in possibility. Again, it wouldn't affect anybody that's in office now. I don't think the sheriff wants to be in office until he's 70 years old, right now, right? So none of this was directed at any one person that holds the office. It was just making the playing field the same for all of us that we've imposed on ourselves, and I think that shows leadership. And Lee County is one of 20 charter counties that has this authority, right? We're not speaking for 67, right? We're only those 20 counties have this, and I think showing our conservative leadership and showing that people have opportunity to serve in the future lends itself to good government. So that's why I support this. So I would just prefer respectfully that if we went with the EMS board direction we had last time to go to the hearing that we have on May 7th already scheduled, I'd like to have the public input that's been noticed for that to be present and be able to speak on the matter, and then we can make an informed decision from there.
Yeah, I just brought it up. I wasn't looking to do any action today. I just brought it up. I don't have a problem May 7th. That's fine.
Appreciate you bringing it up, Commissioner. I think we all got phone calls about it, and
I got phone calls.
a chance to hear about it, and I'm going to be consistent with my past positions, which have always been supportive of term limits.
Was it 89% of the voters? Am I quoting you right?
86?
It was 89%. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
See, I remember what you
Yeah.
said.
Great, we got 12 years.
Great discussion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to clarify, the public hearing on the ordinance will be May 5th.
May
at
5th.
5 p.m.
I misspoke. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Commissioner Hammond, you have Commissioner Hammond.
I guess not. No, just thank you again to all the firms that came and presented today. I think that covered everything during the meeting. So yeah. Oh, Mr. Chairman, real quick, we did cancel the workshop, which I think was absolutely the right thing to do. I don't think we should even be having that conversation right now. People don't want to talk about increase in sales tax, and they certainly have not gained an understanding of the financing that's going into roads right now. And so I would just push back real quick, lightly, on some of the media attention that we've gotten. I mean, we got shredded. We got annihilated on basically talk radio last night and this morning. I went ahead and called into the Jason Jones 92.5 show this morning to try and help explain that you got a couple different budgets. People were saying, well, you got to cut wasteful spending and then you can pay for roads. And I absolutely understand why people say that, right? Because we look at how Washington spends like crazy. They don't even have to have the money, they just spend it. But here in Lee County, we've got basically two buckets. You got your bucket to run the everyday operations, and you got your bucket to build things, and they're funded by different revenue sources. And so to say that here locally is like saying, if we just stop buying groceries, we can build a house. Right. Well, you kind of need groceries, right? And so I think it's absolutely appropriate, though, that we don't have the conversation. We have not, there's just not that level of knowledge out there about the funding that is going into the roads. And so I just think people don't, look, we feel like we're taxed to death enough, and people don't want to talk about more taxes right now.
Well, it's unfortunate. Thank you, Commissioner Hammond. The problem is, like you said, first of all, it's put out inappropriately with the wrong heading, wrong title. The county's raising sales tax to build roads. The next conversation you're going to have the people out east that doesn't want it, neighbors. So they're going to say, oh, well, you should fix 31, which is a state road, by the way. It wouldn't be part of our budget. And they're going to say, well, fix this and make Babcock go away. Unfortunately, that has nothing to do with this. It's kind of like somebody used an analogy with groceries, because you cannot stop spending in one department and use that money to build a road. We all know that. This road's funded based on gas tax, prop share, and other fees that come in for it. But it's unfortunate people just, they just make a comment, and unfortunately social media's next door, what do you want to call it? There's always people out there talking about stuff they have no knowledge of. They're talking about roads that's not even under our preview. They're like state roads. Bayshore is a state road. 31 is a state road. Mr. Petrosky, I'm sure you're getting calls and comments about stuff that has nothing to do with Lee County, but they don't even know who their state rep is. They don't even know who their senator is, unfortunately. But they think we are the ones. And unfortunately, you can't rely on the media to provide the information. This is what the money would be used for. We do have to look at one day about long-term planning. If you want to build roads even faster, we have a lot of roads right now in the hopper, and they want roads, we're building roads. They want roads, we're going to get a lot of roads, but it's going to take time. going through the permitting process and funding. We have a lot of projects that are funded where, you remember 10 years ago, we had roads being built we didn't have the funding for. Now we have funding because we have impact fees coming in, we have prop share coming in, there is gas tax still coming in. So thank you for your comments, because you were totally accurate about that. It's like, if you want to look at long term, yes, but you know, for right now, we just need to focus on the projects we got being built and look at that. Maybe that discussion another day. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Just a couple of comments. I appreciate, Commissioner Hammond, you bringing it up. You know, the sad thing, honestly, is that government budgeting isn't the easiest thing for people to understand. We have a general fund, and then we have enterprise funds. Again, two separate funds. People have said to me in almost 20 years of doing this, we could just find money in the general fund. Our general fund is $700 million. So when you look at the transportation, the general fund funds our operations. So if we cut, we do whatever we can do, we save 5%, we save 10%, we're talking about a nominal amount of money from the general funds. So then you have to go to the enterprise funds. And the reality is road prices have gone out through the roof since the pandemic. This board, kudos to both commissioners, been here a long time. You've done nothing other than lower the millage rate, and for 20 some odd years. So there's no money coming in from there because we're keeping it low. We haven't had a toll increase in Cape Coral in over 30 plus years, so that's saying a lot. Gas tax is certainly by nature going down because less and less people actually utilize gas, and we have electric and other forms of vehicles. You do that in impact fees. So the revenues that we're able to produce are all being restricted. We have to work in this thing called sunshine. So the only way to have a conversation is to bring something up, whether it's sales tax or PPP. More firms are doing PPP, but even when we want to bring that up, there's limitations with PPP. There's great articles about more and more people potentially funding PPP. It's coming from more foreign firms outside the U.S. Is there any consternation with that? There's limitations in PPP that only 15% of your total project can be funded by PPP. So if you look at a big project like the Cape Coral Bridge or something of that nature, 15% is $75 million. So we're not going to get a lot of money, but unless we have an out-of-the-box conversation, I don't know how we're ever going to do this. I had no problem with it. It's unfortunate. If anyone wants to go through the budget, I'd welcome any phone calls. I'd walk through people line by line. If people think we're doing something, I'm always open to the conversations, but in all the years I've sat up on the dais, I don't think I've had 10 people really talk about anything really specific in the budget to say, you should do this or you should do that, over 20 years. So again, I'm all ears, and I think the best time to have conversations with your commissioners is during that, but we have run Lee County in the most efficient, prudent, cost-effective way possible. And again, those are the facts, and you can't get that on a 30-second phone call to talk about it. And again, I think just the complications of general budgeting, especially government budgeting, is very complex, and I'd welcome any conversation where someone wants to come to my office and go through the budget. I'd spend whatever time you need to understand some of the hesitations, some of the restrictions you have. I just wanted to put that on a comment because I appreciate the comments that are out there, and some of the people that have actually brought them up have run for office or been in office before, so there's a lot less information that's available, but certainly some of those people have greater insight, and I wish they would share the broad insight they have.
That's unfortunately, people don't share the facts, and I know any of us here, and you've done it before, like you said, the 10 people that asked about the budget and stuff. It's unfortunate people want, for example, everybody wants more roads. We set traffic every day, and believe me, I lived here all my life, and the traffic is not as bad as it was 40 years ago. It used to take me an hour to get home to Briarcliff at 4 o'clock, because 41 was only 2 lanes to Colonial. But the problem is when you have people like in East Lee County, I'm going to speak because I talked to some of the residents out there, and they said we need Buckingham, we need more roads out here. Buckingham Road's bad, Cemetery Road's, Orange River's bad. That sounds great. We could find the money, but do they really want to lose 60 feet of their front yard? When you start talking about those to those residents, say, you're going to lose your fence, you're going to lose your barn you put in on the right of way, we're going to take 60 feet of your front yard. And look at what happened to Commissioner Greenwell's front yard. There's a road there now. So when you actually talk to people in your district, Commissioner, you say, you want a road? Guess what? We'll do Bay Shore. We'll do this, but look how different that community, they will not change, that will change the real character of it. And then when you start talking facts, you point out numbers, you point out how it's going to affect somebody's community, that the tone changes. Unfortunately, though, we all have to deal with social media, putting stuff out with the long title on it based upon where our actions were actually going to be was to discuss future long-range planning. But, you know, we'll still deal with it. But, you know, for the future, when we deal with that, it's hard to sit down one-on-one with a county of 900,000 people and explain something to them. So, anyway, thank you for the comments. So.
If I may, respectfully, right, we all ran for office. The number one thing people wanted us to fix is traffic, right? I mean, infrastructure, right? So it is challenging, right? We are here to do good government and be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And everybody says, when is this going to get done? When are you going to get this project done? Everything's 50 years away. We don't have the money. We have a $4 billion problem. And in all of our discussions in here and MPO, we all said, look, the first thing we have to do is make sure we're not wasting taxpayers' money, right? If we say what we're going to use the money for whatever bucket of money it is, they have to know that they're making a buying decision based on what they're going to get, right? The money's not going to get swept. It's not going to get used for anything else. Not going to get repurposed, right? And people want to know that we're being effective with their money and that their money's going to go directly to the projects that are important to them, if they chose to make that decision. We all said in MPO and here that this was going to be something that would take time for all the municipalities in MPO said we need time to get ready to get all of our priorities and things in order. This would be at best a 28 initiative. Everything in roads takes longer than you want it to, right? I mean, I'm frustrated as a contractor. I thought there'd be some silver bullet I was going to find here, and I was going to reinvent the wheel here, and we're going to be able to bring projects online faster. I was looking for that silver bullet, but it is a long-term process. So when people ask us, what could I do if, and we just said, let's find out the answer to quantify it, staff upgrades this request to say, well, let's test it out, and we're not only going to do the road projects, we're going to show you that you can build 40 years worth of roads in the next 10 years, but they thoughtfully orchestrated a presentation that I think people might have been interested in, or will be sometime, whenever we have that, to show them that we're tying out the utility projects and all the services that they want for septic to sewer and all these other things, to not put new utility lines in and then throw them away and build the road next year. They thoughtfully went through all those things, and I want to thank them for their efforts on this. It may not be a timely discussion because the media chose to sensationalize as if we were imposing something on by our will today on our agenda, when all we were trying to do is have a discussion of what would you do if, what would you be getting with your money if you chose to spend it this way? What opportunities do we have? And it specifically only covered the sales tax money for those projects. So I thought it was a good discussion, but everybody asked us in every meeting, what are you going to do about traffic? What are you going to do about traffic? So all we wanted to do is have a discussion at a workshop to show them what it could look like and leave it at that. It was just a workshop. So we try to bring good information to our citizens and do a good job up here, and all of us are being very thoughtful, but it is a shame that it gets sensationalized and we get torched in the media because all we did was find the answer to somebody's question.
Right. Okay, thank you. Back to Commissioner items. Do you have anything else, Commissioner?
Thank you,
No?
Mr. Chairman.
No,
I'm all good.
Commissioner Malika, did you have a Commissioner item?
I do not, but I do want to make a point of recognition, please. I went to speak at the St. James Kiwanis Club this week, and they brought some things to my attention about the park at the center. Another dugout roof and a shade structure. And I came back and asked staff for the solution to those, and they already had it on the books, and those projects are happening within the next 30 days. So another little good news, park baseball field upgrade mentioned, but I wanted to say how responsive staff was and how much that meant to the citizens of Pine Island, and then to hear about the, they're here, I got some of them here today, and to get the fire station back online out there. It was nice to be the bearer of good news for that meeting.
Commissioner Project, do you have any comments or any items?
No items, but just a brief comment, circle back on just pulling item 5. Thank you for doing that, because I do think this is not just the DRGR program, but we're taking it one step further and doing right by the entire county and protecting those. And that's very much important to myself and even my district specifically. We really want to be involved, and we want to make sure that the original intention is what we are seeking. And we are, truly believe taking it one step further in this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Committee appointments?
None today.
I have one reappointment, Douglas Kruger, to the Cherry Blueberry Improvement Unit.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any public comment on that action? Any objection? No objection? I do not have any. Commissioner Melissa? None. Commissioner Proboscis? No? Okay. County manager items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one item. I'd like Mr. Sire to present that item.
Commissioners, we're seeking authorization for the board chair to sign various federal correspondence to federal agencies regarding the Fort Myers Beach Pier permitting process. So we've attached a sample letter that would go to National Marine Fisheries Service. That is one of the bottlenecks. Yes, sir. We have a potential looming issue with U.S. Fish Wildlife Services. And of course, another point of engagement would be with FEMA and their EHP review process. Now, there's not anything to be done there until Department of Homeland Security is funded, but I think we could at least be advocating to be at the top of the pile at the, the soonest they can resume activity. So if we could just have blanket authorization for the chair to transmit those kinds of correspondence, that'd be appreciated.
Move the item, the chair signs the letter, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any public comment on that action? Come back to the board. Yes.
Can I just make one comment, please? One, we have our new friends here. I don't know if it's worth having them look over the letter to see, get any possible feedback. Again, you're on the clock. There was one comment in the initial draft letter that came to my attention where it said, meeting this deadline is critical to avoid cost escalation. Maintain contractor availability was one of the terms that was used in here. And I wanted to make sure that the public knew that this contractor is under contract with us, right? They've already signed a contract with us. So the contractor availability context, I think they're going to rewordsmith that a little bit because it's not a matter of if we get the permit and they're busy, that they can choose not to do the job for the price they quoted us. And if there's a reasonable price escalation that can be justified, I think we talked about some of those things already, but the notice to proceed might be a standard 30 days under the agreement. And if this permit drops in our lap tomorrow, they might say, hey, we just started another job yesterday, can we have 6 weeks to move in instead of 4 weeks? Those kind of things I think are reasonable, but I don't want to say availability as if we didn't have one or had to rebid it or if they could cancel. So if we can just clean that up a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
One follow-up question, Mr. Chairman. Just sending the letter is great, fantastic. Want to send it. What about follow-up after the letter? I mean, will we place a phone call to this Andrew Strelchek, after that and make sure that this is on his radar? I like we were saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Let's squeak.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Hammond, absolutely. Staff and our consultant met with him already. We've identified some points where they could expedite the review, and so we will also follow up as well. And I think we're trying to set up some meetings that you might participate in as follow-up to your DC meeting as well.
Good, thank you.
Great. Anything else, Dave?
So the motion's okay to amend the language and have the lobbyists' input on this process and follow up? Is that
I don't have
acceptable?
a problem at all. That sounds fine.
Just to be clear.
Okay, new motion, seconder, who seconded it?
I'll
Okay.
amend my second. Then.
Okay. Any public comment on the amended motion? From the board, any objection? No objection, motion carries. Great, thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no further items.
Great, thank you. County manager?
Anytime.
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Really, nothing?
No, sir.
Okay.
Figured it's a good meeting when the attorney doesn't have to present.
Okay.
It is a great meeting.
Public comment. Public presentation of matter concerning citizens. Is it public comment? Anybody here? I had some cards on from the item number 17 that did not get called, so there's Bonnie still here? Sure. No? Okay. Do you want to still speak? Item 17, we deferred it. We deferred it, so. You deferred the decision? Yeah, we did that early in the day.
We didn't know.
Okay. And then Sue Ann?
The process could be a little confusing. We covered that when we did the recap initially, so apologize for any confusion.
Anybody else? No comments then? No comment, okay. The next card is Tanguo Wilson. He's in the back there, the guy with the mask. He's been waiting to speak. His address is private, and he's here about government crimes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tariq Wilson, also known as the Black God. The Black Music God. And I'm here to address some past violations done by the Lee County government. I'm also not only addressing the Lee County government, I'm addressing the entire universe, because I see that there's a lot of problems and there's a lot of evil going on. So what I've been doing here in Lee County is I've been practicing the civil rights laws that were created by the black people of the past. And I still enforce those civil rights laws as well as the criminal laws. So before I get into the violations that were done by the Lee County government and other...
Sorry, you have to address the board, not the audience.
Yeah, and other places. I wanted to mention that the name Lee County, it needs to change because I said so. That name represents an evil individual. If you don't know white history, back in the days, white people used to kill and terrorize black people, especially the Ku Klux Klan or the KKK, that also used to reside in Lee County from my studies and investigations, okay? So the name Lee County is a name that represents evil. I think the man, the criminal, is up there on the wall, the white supremacist. His name is, I think, Lee, I don't remember his name, but you get where I'm going. If you want more information or you need more, or you have any more questions, you guys can call me at my private phone number, which is 239-209-9466. Again, 239-209-9466. If anybody has any questions about white history and white terrorism done by white criminals of the past and the government. So, yeah, the name needs to be changed from Lee County, and I would suggest it be called Freedom County. So keep that in mind, put that on your agenda, put that on your list of things to work on. Not things that are not important, like dogs and kitty cats. Let's talk about important issues like the Lee County Sheriff's officers and the Lee County Fort Myers Police Department's officers killing black people, harassing black people, terrorizing black people. We need to talk about that. So the next time when I come to this meeting, I'll give you more details. Right now I'm just giving you a general story of the problems in the universe. And I'm here to make corrections and to give suggestions to the powerful white people of Lee County. I don't see any black representatives on this, and I don't see any diversity on this panel, and that's not a good thing. So I think you guys need to consider hiring a black commissioner as well, so there can be more fairness. Excuse me, I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
Your time is up. You have 3
Okay, thank you. I'll be back next time with more details, and you have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Any other public comment on Lee County business? Yes. Any more public comment? Do you want to speak or not? We're going to adjourn in about 30 seconds.
I'd like to say good afternoon at this point, actually. My name is Dominic Hendricks. I am from Lehigh Acres. I took the bus out here today from East Lee.
Thank you for coming down.
Of course, thank you. I'm sorry for missing Class A. For anyone who's watching up there, I told you I'm not playing hooky. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you guys do for the county overall. And specifically, actually, when it comes to the tax, I was going to go to the workshop later, but that was adjourned, and I didn't catch that, sadly. I'd just like to put out there that I actually really would like to see this tax implemented. I know that too many of you are taxpayers, myself included. I hope you're all taxpayers. We all live in the same society after all. And I'd just like to say that the improvement to our public services, for example, again, busing, again, I took an hour and a half to get here. I would absolutely love to see it. It helps all those who are in lower socioeconomic standing, such as myself, as well as others. It enables them to get from point A to point B, no matter if they're students, no matter if they're young adults, or whether these are the elderly, or even people to middle age overall. And these services can benefit everybody and anyone. So I'd just like to speak my piece out there, and I'd like to see if I could possibly speak to you, Mr. Pendergrass, afterwards, if you don't mind, on a topic I had. Thank you.
I'm sorry, one more time, I couldn't hear you.
I'd like to speak to you possibly after this meeting separately, if you wouldn't mind, sir, on the topic. It's considering District 2.
I can give you 30 seconds. I will be next door 11 o'clock today to sign some bonds. So after this, but after that, you always schedule a time to come down to my office anytime though.
Of course, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course, that's not done. You enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.